What up, people? Welcome back to LSU Live. I'm your host, Lewis Johnson. And man, it's exciting times in Baton Rouge right now. Absolutely exciting times. LSU, of course, now has a head coach in place in Lane Kiffin. Since we've last talked, Lane Kiffin has been introduced to the public officially as LSU's coach. He has now had his first LSU signing day, early signing day at LSU. And he's continuing to put his staff in place. So there's a lot to cover, a lot to talk about. But the vibes are up in Baton Rouge right now. Doesn't look good as far as this season. LSU is going to the Dollar Tree Bowl for all we know. But for the future, things are looking up. Vibes are up. On that note, speaking of being up, this LSU signing class is up right now. LSU signing class right now, LSU has 15 players committed, 11 players signed. So even with only 15 players committed, LSU is in 247 Sport Composites, 12th ranked class. LSU has the 12th ranked class on the 247 composite. Just to give you an idea of how impressive that is, nobody is remotely close to LSU as far as the numbers in this class. Like everybody else in that top range is going to have 25, 30. Even USC, which is the top class right now, has 35 commitments. LSU sits at 15 commitments and has the 12th ranked class. So that speaks to the quality of LSU's class right now, even with a couple of defections since Lane Kiffin came on. Speaking of the quality of that class, so 247, they rank their players on a 0 to 100 scale. And LSU's average player, come get your boy. Well, I got a special guest. June, you're killing my nose, man. Go to the camera. Say bye-bye. Yeah, we got an unannounced special guest on the show tonight. He wanted to get in and say a little something, speak his piece on the LSU class. This is how good it is. We got 3-year-olds trying to come in here and talk about how good it is. But look, back to the average ranking for LSU's class. We got a 93.69 ranking, which is the highest per player ranking in the rankings. So if you were to propagate those 15 players to a full class of 2025, you're talking about the best class out there. So it's pretty damn impressive, if you ask me, to hire a coach officially on Monday and sign a top 12 class on Wednesday. And that just speaks to the job that LSU is. It speaks to the place that it is. It's a different kind of place. As Lane Kiffin said, it's different here, and that's why he came. So back to the class. You got 15 commitments. You got 11 guys signed. And, of course, you got a couple of big fish that's still waiting. Kind of trying to see how the staff is going to shake out, which assistants are going to stay, and you definitely understand that. As of now, I want to talk about a couple of the biggest stars of this class right now. And, of course, the biggest name at this point is Richard Anderson out of Carr High School, Carr Mini University. But, yeah, Richard Anderson, or Big Rich, is the top-ranked defensive lineman in the country. Stands at 6'4", 340, dominant guy. He can play in any defensive scheme. He can be a 3-4 DT. He can disrupt as a 4-3 defensive tackle. So we're talking about an absolutely elite player. And you had rumors of Richard Anderson waiting until later on in the week to sign, but he went ahead and signed yesterday on Wednesday. And I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I think that kind of bodes well for LSU's chances with Lamar Brown out of U-High, the top player overall in the country, who's long been committed to LSU, but he's also kind of waiting to sign. But they have the same representation. So I think Richard Anderson signing with LSU, it should give you a good feeling about which way Lamar Brown is going to go. It also should give you a good feeling about LSU's chances of retaining Frank Wilson on his staff in some capacity. Frank Wilson, of course, is LSU's most well-known recruiter, best recruiter, longtime LSU guy, a legend in Louisiana, can walk in any school at any time and talk to anybody he wants. So for Richard Anderson to feel comfortable enough to go ahead and sign, I think that bodes well for LSU. Yeah, we're just gonna get my. All right. Another big star of this LSU class, Bryson Martinez. And I struggle with kind of who to highlight here because you don't have time to talk about everybody. Kind of thought about having Finney, cornerback out of Los Angeles, but I went with Martinez because it's such a position of need. And you got an offensive tackle from local school, Gonzales, EA High School, East Ascension High School. He's a top 10 offensive tackle, consensus 4-star guy, 6'6", 300, but he's not just big. Martinez is a very impressive athlete, absolutely superb athlete. They use him all over the field. If you watch Ole Miss last year when they had that crazy defensive line, they use Pegues in short yardage situations. EA kind of did the same thing. His high school did the same thing with him. You see him in short yardage. You'll see him as a tight end. He even played basketball for East Ascension, but this is a guy who has grown a lot. He had some pretty heavy duty suitors. He had some big schools. Texas was after him, but Martinez not only has kind of rounded out his game and he's become more polished over his senior year, uh, but he comes at such a position of need that I wanted to single him out as one of the most important and one of the best early signees for LSU. And as I said, it's a position of need, so you can't sleep on that. Uh, now that we've gotten to some of the bigger stars of this class, let's talk about some of the biggest sleepers of this class. Some of the guys who might not have the 5-star ranking, but who have some very high ceilings as high as anybody in the class. And I'll start with the cornerback, North Louisiana guy out of Franklin Parish, Dez Pook Ellis out of Franklin Parish High School. Luckily for LSU, this is a guy who, it's going to sound crazy that I say luckily, but he hasn't played a lot of cornerback. And I call LSU lucky because if he'd had more reps at cornerback, he would have been a heavier recruited guy. You'd have more people after him because he's got a skill set. And that's what Corey Raymond saw, LSU cornerback coach. He saw a frame, he saw size, speed, traits, and a skill set that would translate to an elite cornerback. This is a guy who played a lot of offense. He started for 3 years as a quarterback. So he'll have some play recognition skills, some route recognition skills. But the biggest thing for me that he's gained from his offensive play is, or that you see from his offensive play, is the ball skills. Before he got the starting job as a quarterback, he was a wide receiver as a freshman because he was just that kind of athlete. You had to get him on the field. And you see speed and you see ball skills, and it's just something that can't be taken for granted when you talk about cornerbacks. You got a lot of cornerbacks who can cover. You got a lot of cornerbacks with size and speed. Where you see a lot of these guys fall short is playing the ball in the air, tracking the ball, having the skills to go up and attack it like a wide receiver. And that's one of the things you get with Pook Ellis. In addition to a very competitive nature, this is a guy who would take his team and put it on his back at times when he had to. The program had more success than it's ever had at the 4A level during his tenure there. So that's my first sleeper I want to talk about from this class. Another guy I want to talk about from this class is Ryan Merritt, who is a 3-star guy. He was committed to Ole Miss. Of course, he flipped once Lane Kiffin left Ole Miss and came to LSU. But this is a guy out of Miami. Yeah, he's a 3-star guy, but he was recruited pretty heavily. He does have an offer from Miami, and he's an interior offensive lineman. So I won't go as far as to say that he'll be ready to contribute in 2026. You might not get an immediate contribution for him, but he's a guy with some movement skills, with some good size, and again, he's a guy at a position of need. Uh, Now, if you followed Lane Kiffin even remotely, you'll know that he's abandoned in the portal. Lane is going to do his thing in the portal. Great evaluator. He's got the resources to close the deal as well as he's ever had. So I'm expecting big things from him in the portal, and I'm expecting absolutely some offensive line help, and I'm also expecting a quarterback or two in this class. And I won't get too far in the portal talk right now because the high school talk, the high school recruiting is still fresh. It's still going on. As I said earlier, you got guys this year or this week that are going to be making announcements. So it is not over yet for LSU in this early signing class. Biggest name that everybody's still waiting on. You're waiting to see what Lamar Brown is going to do. And look, it's never a sure thing. I used to say you can never know until the pen hits the paper. Well, in these days, you still don't know. You can sign and you can still leave. You got guys that'll sign, enroll, and leave before even going through the spring. And I'm not exaggerating. This actually happens. Uh, so yeah, you got a long way to go. But if you're an LSU fan, I don't think you should worry too much about Lamar Brown for a couple reasons. First thing, like I said, he's got the same representation of Richard Anderson out of Carr. So uh, if Anderson felt comfortable enough to go ahead and sign before the staff was completely ironed out, then I don't think it's a long shot to think that Brown might do the same thing. Uh, but before I get too far into what Brown might do, I want to tell you about Brown as a player. Lamar Brown is absolutely an elite prospect. 5-star plus. If you don't know what that means everybody who ranked them a 5-star. Everybody who has a legitimate ranking system ranked them a 5-star. 247 has him as the top player overall, regardless of position. Plays both ways for UI, offensive line and defensive line. As he projects to the next level, he could play either one. He's looking to play as a defensive tackle at LSU. Just to add to this impressive D lineman class that LSU has, even at 15 commitments, LSU probably is going to have the best defensive line class in the country. But yeah, Brown is the very definition of elite, as good as it gets. Um, but obviously, he wants to see what's going to happen. I mean, who wouldn't? Who wouldn't want to see what Frank Wilson is going to do? Who's going to be the D line coach? Even if Frank Wilson stays, you don't know that. Who's going to be the defensive coordinator? So a lot of these things, it's just going to be a wait and see type of situation. Uh, Other than Brown, you're also waiting on Deuce Gerald's, and I spoke on Gerald's towards the end of the summer when he committed. If you're not familiar with him, his dad played for Ole Miss, was recruited by Frank Wilson. Uh, his dad is originally from Scotlandville, so this is a Baton Rouge guy. Even though Deuce Gerald's plays high school ball in Georgia, he's a Louisiana kid. His folks are from Baton Rouge. Very, very athletic guy. I think it's hard to really put it into words how athletic Deuce Gerald is at close to 300 pounds and plays legit running back in high school. And I'm not talking about short yardage running back. Like, he's a legitimate running back getting out to the edge at that size. Elite athlete on the D line. And the longer this thing goes, I said don't worry about Brown. Well, Gerald, you might want to worry about it. And I'm not saying that anything is done with him. I'm not saying it's a done deal. I'm not saying that he's leaning any one way or another, but I am saying that Georgia Tech is much more of a factor than they were earlier in the process. And Georgia Tech has more of a need. So I'm just speculating. I can only assume that they're throwing more of a bag at him. And I'm not even sure if it's going to come down to that for him, but I'm just saying what makes sense to me. If Georgia Tech is throwing a lot at him and he doesn't know who his D-line coach is going to be, who his DC is going to be, he's got something to think about. Another guy, another signing that LSU is waiting on, and they might get it on Friday, is Trenton Henderson, edge player out of Florida. Henderson is the number one edge from Florida. He's a consensus 4-star guy. Uh, Henderson is a dog off the edge. He's exactly what LSU needs. LSU was able to create a lot of havoc this year, but a lot of it was Perkins, a lot of it was blitzing, and what you saw from your defensive ends, Peyton was very good at disrupting plays, batting balls, tipping balls. Peyton was very impactful, but you didn't have that edge guy who was getting to the quarterback. So I don't want to take away from the guys that they had, but Henderson is the type of guy who can get to the quarterback. So I like LSU's chances of getting Trenton Henderson on Friday. Look out for Miami and Auburn as far as some of the bigger contenders for him. One more guy that LSU is going to be hoping to get on Friday is Bryson Cooley. Cooley is a 4-star offensive lineman, a tackle out of Laurel, Mississippi, and LSU has kind of been fighting off people to keep Cooley in this class for a while. He's been committed. He still hasn't signed, uh, and he's getting courted pretty heavily by Ole Miss and Alabama. So, of course, you want to get all the offensive linemen you can get. Uh, there's no shot at the guys that LSU has. I think a lot of the young guys that LSU has are they're gonna develop into good players, but you don't know at what rate that's gonna happen. You don't want to depend on that completely. The more competition you got, the better off you are. So if you're an LSU fan, you're hoping that you can keep Cooley in this class and get him signed. You might know something as early as Friday. Now, I talked about Ryan Merritt, offensive lineman who flipped from Ole Miss to LSU. Well, you also had a couple of other flips. You had Corey Barber, a wide receiver, 4-star wide receiver from Alabama, who decommitted from Ole Miss after Kiffin took the job. Then he signed with LSU on Wednesday. Barber is a guy when you watch him. It takes watching a few plays to really get an appreciation for his speed because he has what I call easy speed. It looks like he's gliding. It doesn't look like he's running hard, but you see him just separating and getting farther and farther away from people. So Barber is a guy gets deep easily. He's dangerous after the catch. The acceleration can kind of fool you because, as I said, it doesn't look like he's running hard, but he's steadily separating from people. Pretty polished guy for the high school level. Uh, right over 6 feet, about 180, 185. So very impressive receiver that LSU got out of Alabama. Um, and when you get some guys and you get a new staff in, sometimes not everybody is going to make it from that class that you got. So you get Barber, who was once committed to Ole Miss, but you lose Kervin Johnson out of Tioga and right north of Alexandria. Johnson decommitted from LSU and committed to Ole Miss, so it's almost like a trade. Uh, there's been a little speculation on why he left or if he was forced out. I don't know. But anyway, he ended up at Ole Miss. I will say this about I think it's Kenneth Darby out of Airline, another receiver that was committed to LSU and decommitted. A guy like Darby, I'm gonna I'm gonna call you out. I don't think he was necessarily forced out of the class. Yeah, Kiffin had his own guys he wanted in, but that level of skill, I would be surprised if he was forced out. I think Darby was more of a situation of Cortez Hankton was let go, so I don't have my wide receivers coach. I don't know what's gonna happen. Uh, so maybe that was his own personal decision. Anyway, you ended up getting Corey Barber. You lose Johnson and Darby. You also got J.C. Anderson, a 4-star tight end, who was committed to Ole Miss. So very, very solid class for LSU. Um, but talking about Lamar Brown and talking about Deuce Gerald and all of these guys who are waiting, that just kind of goes back to the fact that we're going to find out a lot as this staff continues to take form. for LSU. A lot is going to depend on what happens with Frank Wilson. A lot is going to depend on what happens with Blake Baker, because if Blake Baker takes the Tulane job, or if it's offered to him, he's already interviewed for that Tulane job. Now, at this point, Kiffin is looking for another DC. So if it gets a new defensive coordinator, who knows what that guy's gonna, or who that guy's gonna want to bring with him. He might want to bring his own position coaches. He might want to bring his own D-line coach, his own cornerbacks coach. Uh, as a guy who follows LSU closely, I think Kiffin would be very wise to hold on to a guy like Frank Wilson and Corey Raymond, no matter who comes in as a defensive coordinator. And I think if Baker stays, that solves a lot. But if he doesn't, if he gets the right opportunity, because you also got him rumored to Memphis, um, that could change things. So it's going to come down to if you can keep Baker, and if you hire somebody else, how much autonomy do you give them over his staff? How free is he going to be to bring in his own guys? I want to talk about some comments Kiffin made earlier this week when it comes to recruiting and when it comes to his ideas moving forward for LSU. And he talked about when it comes to recruiting, he's not going to recruit. He's not going to offer a scholarship to a guy because he goes to a certain school or he comes from a certain program or a certain area. He's not so much, in so many words, he's not so much worried about creating a pipeline. He's going to recruit the best players. He is looking at the big picture. So I will say this: if you're looking at the big picture, you do whatever it takes to keep Frank Wilson. And I don't even care if you keep him as a running backs coach. You find some way to keep him on staff, because big picture, there is nobody better at recruiting Louisiana high schools than Frank Wilson. And it's not just Louisiana, but it's especially Louisiana and New Orleans. Uh, and look, New Orleans has been good to LSU for a long time. I think it would be wise. I don't think it's a deal breaker. You lose Frank Wilson, you're never going to get another player. No, I'm not going to go that far. But if you want to automatically get in the door anybody you want in Louisiana, you keep Frank Wilson. You figure out a way to keep him, and I don't care what position it is. I don't care what you pay him. All right. Now back to what I was saying about how the staff how the staff relates to the recruiting. Once everything shakes out with the defensive coordinator situation, and you get the rest of that defensive side of the ball settled, you're going to see the dominoes continue to fall as far as players feeling comfortable enough to commit. Now, that's on defense. On offense, Kiffin has damn near built the staff out. He's got, of course, Charlie Weiss Jr. as OC, committed to come along with him. Weiss Jr. is going to coach. He's going to continue to coach for Ole Miss in the playoffs, and I think that's a good thing for Ole Miss. I don't have anything against Ole Miss. I want them to do well, but you need a play caller. Yeah, go ahead. Let him coach. It's not hurting LSU at this point, I don't think. So you got Weiss Jr. as offensive coordinator. You got Joe Cox as a tight ends coach. George McDonald as your wide receivers coach, which kind of forces Cortez Hankton out. Inside wide receiver coach, didn't know this was a thing, in Sawyer Jordan. Quarterback coach Dane Stevens, and your strength and conditioning guy is Nick Savage. One of your most notable additions, in my opinion, is Billy Glasscock as a GM. Uh, so that's going to force Austin Thomas out. Austin Thomas has been very critical to LSU and what they can do in the portal, and just kind of streamlining how LSU goes about acquiring talent and managing the roster. Thomas is one of the best guys out there. But look, if you're going to put Kiffin in charge, you got to let him do it his way. So I'm perfectly fine with him bringing Billy Glasscock along. And looking at what he was able to put together at Ole Miss, I have full confidence in what he can do at LSU. On that defense, again, I think Richard Anderson signing is a good sign of LSU keeping Frank Wilson, and we'll see if that turns out to actually play out that way for LSU, but I think it's a good sign. I think Haven Finney out of LA, if you get a guy, you get a cornerback to sign all the way from the West Coast, and this is another guy who was kind of rumored to wait. Said he wasn't going to sign on Wednesday. He's going to wait till later, see how it shakes out. But he felt confident enough to go ahead and sign. And this is a young guy, a guy that reclassified from the 27 class. I think that's a good sign for LSU to keep Corey Raymond. But you won't know that for sure until you get that DC in place, I don't think. More on Finney, because I considered making him one of my standouts as far as one of the best players from this class. Because it's another rangy guy. I talked about Ellis at 6'3". Finney is also in that 6'2", 6'3" range. He's a guy that was ranked as the number 1 cornerback for the 27 class. When people reclassify, you kind of don't know where to put them. It kind of reminds me of the situation where Jakeem Stewart last year out of New Orleans, he reclassified, and he had been the number 1 player for the 26 class for so long, and he reclassifies to the 25 class, and they ended up, just ranking him as a high 4-star, I think, and he's already making an impact at USC as a freshman. Same thing here with Finney. Finney is a guy who reclassified. You don't know where to put him, so he ends up as like a top 20 cornerback. As far as his potential, I mean, this is a guy. I won't compare him to Pickett, but he's got a high ceiling. He's got a very high ceiling. He's got all the traits you want. He could be one of the diamonds, one of the absolutely best players from this class. So that's a big get to get him from the West Coast out of LA. So yeah, you got a lot still to come with LSU in this initial class. Later in just another month, less than a month, you will have the transfer portal opening up. So it's a lot to look forward to for LSU. These are exciting times. But look, these are exciting times, but I've had a lot of exciting times for National Signing Day. I'm gonna sound like the old man right now. I'm gonna get on my soapbox and talk like an old man and tell all of y'all how signing day used to be. National Signing Day, it was only one for one thing. You didn't have an early signing day. It was one signing day. It was in February. For anybody who loves recruiting, like myself, it was the biggest day of the year. You got people who would get up early, who would take off work to get up early, line up at the River Center to go to a signing day. I don't even know what you want to call it, party, convention, whatever. And these people would all go get in line just to go in there and see people announce names and put it up on the board, as if they didn't know already who was gonna sign. But that's kind of the joy of it. That was the excitement of it. We didn't know everybody who was gonna sign. Some people were gonna flip. You had kids who were gonna make announcements, and the announcements got so crazy because everybody was trying to outdo the next person, and it gets to a point to where you got to go to extremes to be original. You literally had kids jumping out of planes to make announcements. You had kids bringing out live dogs to commit to Georgia. You had kids organizing a whole ceremony and putting hats on the table who didn't have a single scholarship offer. This is how crazy it was. So those times are gone. But it's still a lot of excitement in signing day. It's the lifeblood of these programs. The transfer portal gets all the headlines, but the best programs, the programs who are there year in and year out, the Ohio States, the Oregons, the Alabamas, the Georgias, are going to be in that top 10, and most of the time in that top 5 in recruiting at the high school level. And then you're going to go in the transfer portal to supplement what you got from high school recruiting. So while I'm reminiscing and talking about old times and how great recruiting used to be, I want to talk about my top 5 LSU classes in the modern era. And I'm going to call it the modern era since the year 2000, the last 25 years. And when I say the best or the top 5 LSU classes, it's not necessarily going to be the most talented classes or the class that produced the most NFL players. I have different reasons for why they're my favorites. It's going to be a combination of where I was in life or what they did for the program, or just simply players that I liked on those in those classes. So my top 5 LSU classes since the year 2000. At number 5 is going to be the class of 2021. In that class, you had some dogs. You had guys like Mason Smith at D tackle. Believe it or not, Chris Hilton was in that class. He's still here. And Hilton was the highest ranked wide receiver in that class. But listen to the next guys I'm going to name off. Hilton was ranked higher than all of these guys. Brian Thomas Jr., Malik Neighbors, Jack Betch. All of these guys are in the NFL and they're thriving right now. But that just goes to show you the kind of athleticism and ceiling that people thought Hilton had coming out of high school. You wish it could have ended better for him, and maybe it would have ended better if the next guy would have been healthy, and that's Garrett Nussmeier was also in this class. You had some longtime starters like Savion Jones at defensive end in this class, and one guy who was in this class who didn't stay but ended up having a hell of a career at Arkansas, edge player Landon Jackson. So that class of 2021 is gonna be my fifth favorite LSU class of all time. At number 4, you have the '09 class. In that '09 LSU class, you had Russell Shepard, you had Ruben Randall, Craig Lawson, all 5-star guys. You had Sam Montgomery, Kevin Minner, Barkevius Mingo. The NFL talent just doesn't stop. And this is my 4th favorite class. Michael Brockers, Morris Claiborne, Akeem Hicks, another guy who didn't stay but played in the NFL for 100 years. Crazy class in '09. It's really unbelievable that they couldn't manage to win a championship, and they got close. A lot of these guys got close. Russell Shepard is. I don't know if I can never forgive Les Miles for such a mismanagement of talent. Just absolutely malpractice to not utilize Russell Shepard more than what they did. They just simply didn't know what to do with him. At that point, Miles was in his prime. Les Miles was in his prime as far as we're going to do the halfback toss 2 times and we're going to throw it on 3rd and long, and that's going to be that. The defense is going to win it. So it was hard for Russell Shepard to really find his place. He's a guy who was recruited as a quarterback, but you knew he wasn't going to play quarterback. But fun to watch, fun to see him talk in interviews. That '09 class was a classic. At number 3 in my top 5 LSU classes, we have the 2003 class, and I'm going to show my age. 2003, man, this was different. You had LaRon Landry. You had a safety who got drafted in the top 10. I think he was number 6. LaRon Landry in that class. Matt Flynn, national championship quarterback. Jamarcus Russell, number 1 pick overall. I don't care what he did after that. He's the number 1 pick. So how many classes had a national championship quarterback and a number 1 pick in the same class? Crazy. Dwayne Bowe, great career in the league. Buster Davis, 1st rounder. Ali Broussard, Justin Vincent. You'd be hard pressed to find one class with a better tandem of running backs. '03 was crazy. '03 was absolutely crazy. And I think I'm pretty sure Landry ended up starting his first year as a freshman. So '03 is going to be my 3rd favorite LSU class of all time. At number 2, you have the 2011 class. They call it the fam. Lyle Collins out of Baton Rouge. Freak Johnson. Jarvis Landry. Maddenberger. I think he might have been a transfer. Either way, he was in that class. I don't care what he was. Kenny Hilliard. Jamario Rasco. You had OBJ in that class. You got Beckham in it. And Jeremy Hill. And I just talked about uh, Broussard and Vincent being in the same class. How about Kenny Hilliard and Jeremy Hill in the same class? 2011 was nuts. Absolutely silly class. No way they should have gotten out of LSU without winning the championship. But LSU's offense was stuck in neutral for about 10 years. So it is what it is. But a lot of these guys had great careers, and it was fun to watch them. It was super fun to watch them while they were here. Um, Now, at number one, this class means a lot. Not just because of the talent. You got some All Americans in this class. You got first rounders in this class. Uh, but this class, it kind of changed what LSU was known as, and kind of was a big part of what LSU has become today. And it won't come as a surprise. This was in the Nick Saban era. It was his second class, and that is the 2001 class. 2001, you had All-American Ben Wilkerson at center. You had Michael Clayton out of Baton Rouge, Joseph Adai, first-round running back out of Houston, Marcus Spears. You don't win that national championship without him, obviously. You had Marquise Hill on the other end. Rest in peace of Marquise Hill. Absolutely star-studded class. And not just a star-studded class, but this is the class that changed things for LSU. These guys, this was Nick Saban's statement to the world that this is not the same LSU. Uh, in a very short period before that, like if this was 3 or 4 years before that, a guy like Michael Clayton, he goes to Florida State, or Texas or something. Like you don't hold on to guys like that because that just wasn't the culture of LSU back then. It wasn't how kids grew up back then. Kids didn't grow up in Louisiana wanting or expecting to go to LSU. They wanted to go to Florida State, Miami. You look at a guy like Cordell Stewart going to Colorado. LSU just wasn't like that back then. And that class went a long way in changing things as far as expectations around the program. Like you talk about Nick Saban putting a fence around the state, and after that, you expected to keep these guys. Yeah, a couple of them are going to get out and go to Alabama or something like that, but that kind of changed the mentality around the program and in the state at the high school level. So the 01 class was huge, and that is right now that's my favorite LSU class of all time. And I got to mention one as an honorable mention because you can't include everybody. But honorable mention for this top five, barely missed the cut, was the class of 2014. And the class of 2014 had a combination of your big stars like Leonard Fournette and Malachi Dupree, five-star guys, but you also had the guys who did the dirty work, the guys who went underappreciated, the Darrell Williams at running back, Russell Gage at receiver, who three-star guy, doesn't get any attention, and he's playing 10 years later in the NFL. DJ Shark wasn't a heavily recruited guy. John Battle, he played good ball for you. These aren't just stars, but these are guys who just helped the program. These were program guys. Will Klepp, Devon Gottschall with the Saints. Uh, Another malpractice as far as just ruining talent, Brandon Harris. Brandon Harris was one of the most impressive quarterbacks I've watched at the high school level in Louisiana, and I've watched a lot of them. But he had so many tools, and I won't turn this into a Les Miles bashing session, but that offense ruined him. He lost his confidence. He transferred, and he never turned out to have the career that I thought he was going to have. But Brandon Harris was damn talented at the high school level. So that being said, LSU still wrapping up a top 12 class who's looking to grow and get even better. We're looking forward to seeing how the staff is going to shake out because that's also going to play a big part in how the class shakes out. Until next time, it's your boy CFB Lou. Follow me on TikTok and Twitter at CFB Lou. Like and subscribe. And I say like and subscribe not just because it helps me, but like and subscribe so the phone will remind you when the show is coming on. Look, my wife is obviously in the same house with me. She doesn't even know when I do my show. So just go ahead and subscribe so you'll have a little reminder. Hey, CLB Lou, don't come on and talk about LSU. All right, so check me out. Until next time, I'll holler.
Hey, y'all. This is Grant Sashray of LSU at the Voice of College Football Network. I'm here today to announce that the Voice of College Football Network now has its official website. It's been uploaded so you can look at all the latest news and content from the Voice of College Football Network. You can also look at different forums, channels, shows, and it has to show all the show schedules right here and the host. Make sure to check out the Voice of College Football's new website at vocfb.com. Once again, vocfb.com.